Hey Film Boss, welcome back to Film Feature 43. With Scream 7 coming out, I wanted to do more of a silly video and talk about the dumbest moments in each of the films in the franchise. And maybe not the dumbest, but at least the most unbelievable. I love these movies, I'm just poking fun at some of their fictitious elements. So without further ado, let's get into talking about the moments. Scream 1, the obvious one in my mind when I started this was the garage door, crushing Tatum. But when I started doing some research, it actually seems like this kill could be possible. The Spring Hill Estates, which is Stu's house, was built in 1990, and the garage door opener that seemed to be used could lift 300 to 500 pounds, and the garage door is only 300 pounds. But with the springs attached, they do most of the heavy lifting, so the garage door opener would only have to exert about 15 to 30 pounds to lift the garage door, so it's very easy to lift a 110, 120 pound woman into the air. And before 1993, there didn't have to be any stopping or reversal mechanism, so it's very likely they weren't on the door, so it would have just kept going until it met some resistance and ultimately tried to get past that resistance, leading to a crushing death. Between 1982 and 1996, there were 63 crushing deaths due to garage doors in the United States, so it's definitely possible. Those crushing deaths tended not to be someone crawling through a garage door, but the door shutting on them. But all in all, the force is there to make this kill possible. The next thing that I thought about was Principal Hembry's death, because they killed him in the school. Then they had to wait for everybody to be completely gone without being seen, drag his body out to the goalpost. And both killers seem to be accounted for at this time. So one person did all this and got back to the party without being seen or without taking hours to do so. That's kind of unbelievable. But I think the dumbest things in this movie are the two Ghostface encounters in broad daylight, which is the one in the bathroom, which gained Billy and Stu nothing for doing it. It doesn't make sense that you would attack Sydney in a full school in broad daylight. But even dumber than that is the Ghostface that follows Sid and Tatum through town. That doesn't seem like something Billy and Stu would do in broad daylight, because it doesn't add any spookiness to Sydney's experience because she doesn't know it's happening. And to be caught in broad daylight doing that just doesn't make any sense. Scream 2 has two contenders with the most unbelievable scene. The first is when Mrs. Loomis pulls a grown man into a van, that being Randy, and enters, exits, and eviscerates him without ever being seen. I just don't know that she would have the power to do that and overcome Randy. I mean, he's not a huge guy, but either is Debbie. Debbie's very small. Also, you have a different car scene where Sydney and her friend climb out through the window over Ghostface and don't unmask him, don't stab him, don't do any of that stuff. And when they decide that Sydney's going to go back and do that, he disappears and shows up a couple hundred feet down the alleyway and kills the friend. That whole scene's kind of unbelievable, that Sydney wouldn't see him getting out of the van, or they wouldn't do something about it when he was knocked unconscious. The dumbest moment in Scream 3 could go to the voice changer that
got our voices.
It just doesn't make sense that, one, it would have everybody's voices, because that technology really doesn't exist now.
Talking about how much fun it's gonna be to rip your insides out. Now open the door, Christine!
Or the fact specifically that they would have a woman who's been dead for 5 years in Maureen Prescott's voice. That really doesn't make sense.
Would you like to hold me one last time?
But that one's kind of easy, so I will give it to the dumbest decision that I think happened in the entire franchise, and that is the gas leak kill. I think it's one of the coolest kills as far as the actual explosion that they did, but the kill itself doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't the victim use a flashlight or go outside or just ignore these messages that are specifically coming from a killer? Why does he have to read it? And why would he use a lighter to do so? It just doesn't make any sense. It would have made more sense if there was a timer or something set for Ghostface to have the pilot light kick on or something and cause that explosion, instead of relying on the victim to do it himself by lighting a lighter. It doesn't really make sense. And also, there's so many opportunities for someone to light a cigarette or something as the night's progressing, because they're at the house for an extended period of time. It could have been a premature kill anyway, so I think that has to take the cake for the dumbest moment. Scream 4 is kind of a short one, and that is the ability to stream all these kills. I don't think the technology was there to have someone running and jumping and stabbing and jostling around. I think the video would be unusable and headache inducing, and I just don't think that live streaming your kills, specifically in 2010, would be possible. So that's kind of unbelievable. So Scream 5 has a couple contenders for most dumb moment. The first is the fact that somebody with the stature of Amber is able to lift a grown man like Dewey into the air and kill him. I know Ghostface is seen to have super strength a lot of the time, but that one's probably the most unbelievable feat of strength that we see Ghostface have.
It's an honor.
The second moment is the hospital scene where both killers seem to be accounted for and Sam is chased out of the break room. I think that someone out of all the Ghostface killings or chases, that would have been the most likely to be caught, because he's in a hospital with a bunch of people and he just goes out a back door. But for me, the most unbelievable scene in Scream 5 is when Judy blares her siren through town and has her lights on and makes it to her front door and is stabbed in broad daylight, and none of the neighbors are nosy enough to look out and see why a cop car blared into their neighborhood and see Ghostface killing the town sheriff on their front porch. That doesn't really make sense to me. I think that they should at least let her get into the house and look for Wes and get killed somewhere in the house. But they were going for a shocking, she didn't make it to the door kill. So that's what they're going for. I think it would have been more believable if they let her get to the house. Scream 6 has a couple contenders for plot points that kind of stretch our belief. The first is the fact that no one knew that Richie had a family. Like, Gail never looked into it. The FBI was looking into these cases and never knew that Richie had a father and two siblings that could want revenge on Sam. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I understand that the characters wouldn't know that to befriend these people.
Mindy was right. It was easy to juke the roommate lottery.
But the FBI and Gail didn't know. But the dumbest thing that I think happens in Scream 6 is the killing of Quinn and the replacing of her body by her father, because no one questions that her father was the first on the scene, and there was no DNA evidence taken on the body at the scene, and he was able to get in and out without being seen by any cameras in New York City, which is probably one of the most heavily surveilled cities in the United States. It's just odd to me that the cops wouldn't have checked any of that and saw Mahoney going in and out and not thought, hey, that's weird that he's doing that at the scene of his daughter's killing. And getting a dead body up to the apartment without being seen is another just bizarre thing that really makes you believe that these take place in a movie universe. So that's all the moments that I have. Again, I'm just poking fun at the franchise that I love. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.